All right, guys. So it's time to talk about wokeness in corporations and companies in general. I came across this article from Business Insider as I was kind of just going through the internet. And I like to talk about these particular things because, number one, it's something different from our normal conversations that we have, regarding entertainment and all that stuff. But number two, it kind of gets into the deep seated rooted issue that is happening right now in not only corporate America, but entertainment, movies, TV show, gaming, everything. It is a deep, deep problem. And we're going to talk about the statistics behind all this and why companies apparently, little by little, are walking away.
It's over now.
So this article here has a headline that says, "Woke no more. Companies were starting to support political causes, but now they're too scared to speak up." Now, Business Insider is going to try to make it seem as if these companies should, in fact, be speaking up against societal issues and basically dividing their consumer base. But if anybody knows anything about business, you know that Republicans buy shoes too, if you catch my drift. So let's get into this article, guys, from Business Insider. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into that YouTube algorithm. So this article was written by Emily Stewart. Pretty, it's what you expect. Like, I don't really know what else to say other than that. It's what you expect from an article like this. It says Unilever spent years crafting its image as corporate goody two-shoes. The owner of Dove, Vaseline, Hellmann's, and a bunch of other brands acts quarterly reporting and earnings guidance in the name of focusing on sustainable long-term growth. Under Paul Pullman, its CEO from 2009 to 2019, it said that it would take into consideration all its stakeholders, not just shareholders, and set out to halve its environmental footprint, including greenhouse gas emissions, waste, and water use, while doubling its sales over a decade. 5 years and 2 chief executives later, Unilever is changing its tune. It's not doing a U-turn on environmental, social, and governance efforts, but it says it's being more realistic about what it can achieve and when. And those shareholders Unilever wasn't so beholden to, it's paying them a little more in mind now. Now, guys, we already know. Let's just start off this way, right? We already know about companies like BlackRock and Vanguard, right? We already know what happens when these certain investment companies start investing in corporations like these. And what happens is that ESG starts to become a prominent thing. But even Vanguard, even BlackRock had to openly admit recently, about a month or two ago, had to admit that ESG actually is not good for business. They openly admitted that pushing stuff like this in corporations is not good for overall business strategy. They only do it because they deem it to be important, right? They deem it to be important and something that they want to push and force. They want to force social change on people. Well, you're starting to find out that ESG is not something that can have a long-term sustainability. It's impossible, right? When you are forcing social change to the point where you're going to piss off right off the bat 50% of your potential customers, maybe more, maybe less, but let's just even it out at 50%, you're not exactly doing something that's going to be good for business. Like Michael Jordan said, Republican buy shoes too. And that basically means that, hey, why would I want to defy my client base when they need sneakers too? They need shoes too. They're going to give me their money if I make good products. Why would I do that? It's the same exact thing here. It's something that stands the test of time, ironically, all the way until now in 2024. Then it says to be more realistic about what it can achieve and when, blah, blah, blah. Unilever isn't alone in this. Plenty of companies are relying on their rhetoric, in some cases, action on issues such as sustainability and diversity. They're being extra cautious about weighing in on social and political debates of the day, especially in an election year. In some cases, they're telling their workers to cool it too. Google, for example, fired more than 2 dozen workers for protesting its contract with Israel's government. Now, I remember when that happened, and that happened live for everyone to see, which was fantastic. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am starting to notice that companies are taking a back burner. We just did a video recently on Target. Last year, Target tried to beat everyone to the punch except for Bud Light, and they tried to put out these tuck-friendly merchandise, like this rainbow-inspired woke merchandise that nobody in their mother really would utilize aside from like 5 people per state. But they wanted to force this stuff on people and pretend as if it was the norm and then put it in the front of their stores as if everybody walking in is going to want to buy it. But let's be real, ladies and gentlemen, that wasn't the case. They got so much backlash that their stock tanked heavily and hasn't really recovered since then. And now we're starting to realize that Target actually is not going to be selling that merchandise in a lot of states that wouldn't really push that kind of stuff, right? Like they're going to be focusing on selling it in New York and California, Chicago, places like that. But they're not going to be focused on selling it or at all in like states like Florida, Texas, so they're, Alabama. They're not going to be doing that stuff. So they even realized that, hey, if we're going to push this stuff, we have to push it in the markets that actually want it. We can't be pushing it on everybody and anybody because we're actually losing customers by doing this. It doesn't make much sense. And then it says that many executives have made the decision that it's sometimes safer to just be silent versus to take a stance because they have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders and their bottom line and are very concerned about how this will be perceived, said Naomi Wills, a board director for Eventbrite, who was formerly a global head of customer success at Square. Call it the great unwokening. So, guys, I think we could all agree that most companies, unless you are a politically based company, meaning like you sell some form of political product, I really don't know how else to put it other than that, there's no reason why you should be having a political opinion. What ends up happening is that you are going to create a divide. Like we talk about this all the time. Why would you want to divide your client base? That makes no fucking sense, right? You want to pretend as if these social changes are so important. They're so unbelievably important, but we all know to these companies, these social issues are not important at all. They were only important when they were fooled into believing that it was going to provide them extra profit by virtue signaling and pandering. And they found out over the last 5 years that is not the case. Yeah, sure. Maybe it was hot in the beginning. Maybe in 2020, 2021, even 2022, it was probably a little hot. But then eventually what ended up happening is people got tired of it. People got sick of hearing about it all the fucking time. You want to constantly put your sexuality in your fucking bullshit identities in people's faces, and people get fed up. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to hear about it. So that's what ends up happening, and then apathy sets in, and then nobody wants to deal with it, and we just don't even care anymore. So what ends up happening is that these companies start to take a big hit. They start realizing, man, all this money and time that we're investing into ESG isn't actually paying off in the first place. It says over the past decade, many corporations have at least professed to take a more active role in societal issues under pressure from their customers and, more importantly, employees. Companies pushed back on North Carolina's bathroom bill in 2016, and when Donald Trump took the White House, many spoke out against his policies on immigration and the environment. Yeah, well, look how that immigration policy is working out now. It's working out so great that the freaking city-states, the sanctuary states, are getting completely ransacked by migrants that you can't even keep up with the demand. It says in the wake of George Floyd's, whatever. Anyway, I don't even want to talk about George Floyd because that's obviously going to be put a political spin by Business Insider. So then it says you can almost say that ESG ran unopposed for a few years, said Andrew Jones, which it did. It did. That's what we were talking about before. The reason why we got where we are today is because we chose to ignore the signs of what people were doing and activists taking over certain companies and communities. Like we didn't even care because a lot of people didn't want to be bothered, right? Even if you're a centrist, most people just didn't want to be bothered with it. Like just whatever, like who cares? But then eventually what happens is you start to ignore it so much that they're going to come for you whether you like it or not. They're going to come for your ideology. They're going to come for your kids, guaranteed. And it's going to become a point where you're going to have to say something. And now what's happening is people are actually trying to and having to say something, and those voices are getting louder and more prominent and more voices in general, to the point where now we have a counterculture to this nonsense that we've been dealing with. So I'm glad to see that companies are starting to unwokeify, so to speak, and I think it needs to happen more. I don't think these companies need to have a political stance. There's no reason whatsoever why I need to know the politics of like a coffee company. Like I don't need to know that, right? So hopefully this ends up being a thing that they tend to adopt in the future. And like I said, change happens slowly, change happens gradually, and we are seeing the pendulum swing the other way. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.